black dress, red dirt. She is frozen at the open grave when a rough stranger steps from the mourners and says, "You are not ending, you are starting." She flinches, wipes mud and salt from her face, and stares back like the ground itself just spoke. "Who are you?" she asks. "A man who digs truth out of stone," he answers, as the last clod hits the lid. Mara hears the wooden thud and does not lean in. The priest closes his book. The crowd breaks. Wind lifts her black dress and shows red dust on her boots. The stranger waits at the path, hat low, hands empty. "Say what you came to say," she tells him. "I came to say, you are not done with him," he says. "I just put him in the ground." You put their story in the ground, not his. Whose story? The men who wanted him quiet. She tastes iron and remembers the sheriff calling it an accident, a slip into the quarry. No foul play. Quick words, cool eyes, a pen scratching while she stared at his badge. "What's your name?" she asks. "Call me Hale," he says. "I break stone for a living. I listen when it speaks." Stone doesn't speak. It does when blood hits it. She looks at his scarred hands. "Why me?" she says. "Because you won't thank the sheriff for closing the book." At the gate, two councilmen offer stiff smiles. "Sorry for your loss," one says. "Your ranch needs a steady hand. We can help with the sale." "It's not for sale," Mara says. "Grief makes folks slow." The other adds, "There's a clock on those taxes." Hale watches them go. "Power likes fresh graves," he says. "Leave me alone," she says, but soft. He nods and walks toward the road. Home smells like wet rope and wheat. The house sits crooked on red dirt. She sets the kettle and stares at the sink. The well pump groans. Water comes up cloudy, then clear. Ruth from the next ridge arrives, with soup. "Eat something," Ruth says. "I can't keep it down." "You don't need to. Just chew." "Did you hear what the sheriff said?" "I heard accident. I heard him look at you like you were in the way. He told me to let men do their work. Then don't. Do yours." Ruth leaves the soup. The well knocks once, like a door. She tells herself it is pipes. She sleeps on the couch with the lamp on. Knuckles rap at dawn. Hale stands on the stoop with red dirt on his boots. "I shouldn't be here," he says. But the rock keeps talking. "Go away," she says. "I found his hat wedged in a seam 60 feet from where they said he fell. The brim was torn by a tool, not time. You don't know his hat." Hale lifts a cloth bag. Inside lies the hat, crushed and dry, a shallow smear along the brim. She knows the stitch at once. Her stitch. "How did you get that?" she whispers. "I went back after they locked the site. I work nights. I see what day misses." "You stole evidence." "There was no evidence in their book." "What do you want from me?" she asks. "Your story," he says. "The last week, every hour," she tells him on the porch, because inside feels watched. Threats that sounded like advice. "Sell early. Sign quick." The sheriff's visit 3 days before the body. The well that began to taste like metal. Hale listens without a pen. "He was doing whistle work," he says. "What is that?" "Pay. For silence. A job to keep him from talking about what he saw on your land." "What did he see?" "Poison," Hale says. "Drainage from the plant up valley. It's been bleeding into your creek for a year. My cows drank that water." "So, did you?" Rage rises simple and clean. "Who?" she says. "Council. Plant owners. Sheriff keeps the lid on. And you're the hero." "No," he says. "I'm the man who digs. You're the one who stands." The kettle hisses, though she did not set it. The house seems to hold its breath. "I want proof," she says. "I'll bring stone with numbers in it," he says. "But you'll need people. I have Ruth. You'll need more than soup. I have a church full of women who are tired." "Good," he says. "Tired is dangerous." He steps back. "They'll come by with papers," he adds. "Don't sign." "I won't." "You'll want to," he says. They'll use your husband's name like a key. Then I'll change the lock. Hale almost smiles. I'll be at the quarry. She watches him go. She thinks of the grave and the last clod. She thinks of the well knocking like a door. She is afraid the dead will come in if she opens it. She opens it anyway, very slowly. She fills a jar with water and sets it by the window. You are not ending, she tells the room. You are starting. The promise hangs in the air. The widow stands by the open grave and does not blink when the badge glints from the hill. Smoke from cheap cigars frays the air. The stranger's breath stays even beside her. You're trespassing, the sheriff calls. I'm walking, the man replies. She is under my protection, the sheriff adds. The widow answers through ash and grief. No one owns me. Mara feels red dust climb her boots. Hale does not touch her. We're done here, he says. We'll leave on our own feet. The sheriff studies them. This ground is county, he says. It's a graveyard, not your porch, Mara says. You're upset, he answers. That makes you easy prey for loud advice. You signed my husband's death as an accident. I signed what the quarry boss swore. Then you swore with him, she says. Hale stays calm. We're going, he says. Watch, if you like. Not yet, the sheriff says. They move through the mourners. Carnations lose to cigar smoke. At the gate, 2 councilmen wait with mirrored shoes. Mrs. Klein, one says, we can talk relief. Taxes, a smooth change of hands. My hands are not changing, Mara says. Debt makes land shallow, the other says. Then dig deeper, Hale says. Stability, the first adds. Then stop pushing, Mara says, and keeps going. Hale matches her pace. You did well, he says. I wanted to run, she says. Wanting and doing aren't the same. You've been chased. Often, he says. They pass the church lot. Women in dark dresses gather. Ruth meets them. You stirred the hill, Ruth says. It stirred itself, Mara says. Ruth nods at Hale. You the digger? Yes. Are you worth trouble? I'm worth a shovel, he says. Good, Ruth says. We'll need one. He said I'm under his protection, Mara says. He likes to dress a threat as a blanket, Ruth says. Don't crawl under it, I won't, Hale says. I need samples from your creek and well. Numbers make men pretend to listen. You have my land, Mara says. You have your land, he says. I have your consent. They part at the road. Come to the fellowship hall, Ruth says. Eat, plan. In a minute, Mara says. She watches the hill until the badge is only a tick and light. She follows Ruth. The hall smells like coffee and dust. Beth sets a jar of well water on the table. From your place, Beth says. Mara leans in. A faint red sheen clings to the glass. I thought it was rusty pipes, she says. It isn't, Beth says. Kids have rashes. Cows won't finish their troughs. Hale rolls the jar in. His palm? I'll take it, he says. And soil. What will numbers do? Beth asks. They make ink smear, Hale says. Mara eats because Ruth is watching. I'm going home, she says. Ruth, come with me, always, Ruth says, lifting the church directory like a flag. We will call, we will not ask. They ride the red road to the ranch. The house waits plain and tired. The well pump knocks once, then again. Mara sets the jar on the windowsill. He listened for that knock, she says. Said the ground was clearing its throat. Let it speak, Ruth says. We'll give it a crowd. Hale comes before dusk with wet boots and a canvas pack. He lines sample bags on the porch rail. The creek shines under a lamp, he says. Not right. Will it hold up? Mara asks. It will make a judge hesitate, he says. Headlights roll down the lane. A county car stops at the gate. The sheriff steps out. Evening, he says. Stay on the road, Mara answers. I came to check on you. I'm standing, she says. His eyes tick to the bags. Rock trophies. Truth, Hale says. Truth is heavy, the sheriff says. Careful, it doesn't pull you under. Fear is heavier, Mara says. He points toward the porch. I'll return with papers. Executors leans. I'll have water and friends, she says. Friends don't pay taxes, he says. They vote, Ruth says from the doorway, and they talk. He tips his hat. Good evening, ladies. Digger. He leaves. They wait until the road swallows the lights. Hale closes his pack. I'll take these to a man who tests without asking who he's hurting, he says. When will you be back? Mara asks. Before the next knock, he says, glancing at the well. Ruth squeezes Mara's shoulder. We should call the women, she says. Make a list of who owes the councilman and who the councilmen owe. We'll pull it tight, Mara says. Ruth opens the directory. Start with Beth, she says. Then Alma, then June. Mara nods. She picks up the phone. Beth, she says when the line clicks. It's Mara. We're not selling. We're not signing. We're gathering at my place at sunup. Bring jars. Bring stories. Bring names. Hale watches her. That's a promise, he says. It is, she says. Ruth writes. Say it again, she tells Mara. Mara faces the door where the night crowds. No one owns me, she says. No one owns my dead. No one owns this water. The well knocks. Once, as a reply. She breathes and feels the fear move but not rule. The promise hangs there, steady. It waits for sunup, and so does she now. The wake that wouldn't end the church hall quiets. Coffee gone cold. Everyone pretending the old family isn't watching from the door. They took the ranch in paper, she says. Paper burns, the man says. A hum turns strange, like the mountain's throat clearing, and the widow feels something in the floorboards answer. Mara keeps her hands on her cup until the shaking stops. Hale stands by the jars with his canvas pack. Ruth counts heads with a pencil. We need a plan, Ruth says. We start with the well, Beth says. We start with the sheriff, Mara says. He'll come when he smells a crowd. Let him, Hale says. Crowds make light. Paper hates light. Mara says, they took the ranch in paper. Again, then burn it right. Hale says, numbers, statements, bodies in chairs. At the council. Bodies in pews now, Ruth says. Stand up. The old family steps inside. We came to pay respects, the oldest man says. We also came to help with the land. The land knows who feeds it, Mara says. Debt makes memory short, he says. We can hold the deed while you grieve. You can hold your breath, Ruth says. The old woman lifts a folded page. Cash, clean, she says. Read it, Ruth tells Mara. Mara reads payments, liens. The sheriff's name as witness. You came as buyers, she says. We came as both, the old man says. Every town runs on deals and funerals. Then let it run on women, Beth says. Hale spreads a map. Creek bends, he says. Culverts and fences. I took samples here and here. I'll drive them. To a tester who doesn't ask names. Enough, Elma asks. Enough to slow them, Hale says. Enough to get a hearing. Slow isn't stop, Mara says. Stopping takes noise, he says. A badge glints at the door. The sheriff comes without his hat. Evening, he says. This is a wake. It ends when we stand up, Ruth says. Sit or speak true. He eyes the pack. Samples. From my land, Mara says. From county water, he says. Then everyone should drink, she answers, lifting a jar. A thin red thread slides through the glass. Optics, the sheriff says. You're hurting yourselves. We already hurt, Mara says. The floor knocks once, crisp. Mara leans on anger until her hands go still. We are not children, she says. We buried a good man and we won't bury his land. Careful, the sheriff says. Words get heavy. Let them, Ruth says. Hale taps the map. Runoff. Enters here, he says. If numbers hold, we demand a stop. You're not an inspector, the sheriff says. I don't need a badge to count dead cows, Hale says. Another knock answers, 2 taps like a message. The organ breathes a low note without a hand on it. Sun up at my place, Ruth says. Bring jars, bring bills, bring names of whoever pushed papers at your doors. You want trouble, the sheriff says. We want truth to stand where folks can see it, Mara says. If it looks like trouble, that's truth with a spine. Permits, he says. Road rules. We'll stand on our dirt, Ruth answers. You can't permit a porch. You can trespass on peace, he says. Peace left when men came with pens, Mara says. He studies her like she grew taller. You're making a scene. Scenes get remembered, Beth says. Hale rolls his map. I'll drive now, he says. Chain stays clean if I keep moving. You trust the tester? Ruth asks. I trust his hunger, Hale says. He eats by numbers. Mara wants to say the floor has a voice, but swallows it. Go, she says. Come back before they try another door. Lock yours, he says. Locks don't help, she answers. Then light helps, he says. He nods and goes. The old family gathers coats. Think quick, the old man says. Think straight, Mara says. He nods like a preacher who lost the room and leaves. The sheriff lingers. I'll send a deputy to keep things in hand, he says. Your hand? Ruth asks. He smiles small. Evening, he says, and soap and warning trail after him. When the door shuts, the women draw close around Mara. You shook them, Ruth whispers. No, Mara says, hearing the boards breathe and settle. We woke them. The hum thins to a thread more felt than heard. Coffee cools to mud. Plans fill the margins of bulletins. Names pass down the line like cups. The wake doesn't end. It changes work. Mara lifts a jar and watches the red thread refuse to sink. She sets it down and steadies her voice. Sun up, she says. Bring everything. We will, they answer, and the promise hangs there, steady as her breath. Outside, night waits on the steps. The well under the cottonwood they step, out from the wake into blue dark, and walk straight to the old well she was told never to open. Listen, he whispers. She hears water, then memory, then her mother's voice threading the rope. Pull, the voice seems to say. The bucket rises with a stained envelope sealed with the governor's crest. The cottonwood leans while the stones sweat. Hale keeps one hand on the rim and one on the rope. Mara steadies her breath to his and feels the ground pay attention. Your mother kept it shut, he says. She said the well knew more than we did, Mara answers. She said, water keeps secrets until it doesn't. Tonight, it spoke, he says. Or you did, she says. Either way, we pull. The rope burns her palms as they lift. The wood creaks. The envelope lies across the bucket like a warning. It shouldn't be dry, she says. It shouldn't be here, he answers. But it is. He lifts it with 2 fingers. The crest shows a crown of wheat and a star. Governor's office, he says. Real seal, fake comfort, she says. Open it, he tells her. My mother said some papers are doors, she says. Once open, they do not shut. Then we do not shut, he says. She slides a knife under the flap. Wax cracks. Thin pages and a folded map fall into her hands. Red pencil crosses fields and bends. The first line reads, Emergency Authorization for Diversion and Containment. The second names the plant up valley. Then comes signatures. Council chair, quarry boss, sheriff, a deputy governor. A dull stamp shines with county ink. She spreads the map on the bucket rim. Her creek runs like wire through fields. Arrows point toward pits marked holding. Small X marks sit on borders where homes stand. A note reads, Auxiliary acquisition by consent. Consent, Mara says. They call it that. They call it anything that pays, Hale says. This is not local. It is now, she answers. He checks. The dates, they matter. She reads and feels her ribs go tight. 2 months before he fell, she says. They were working while we slept. They were counting on it, he says. Wind moves through the cottonwood and sets the rope trembling. The well smells like pennies and rain. Footsteps crunch on gravel. Ruth comes with a flashlight held low. I knew you two would test the rule, she says. I hear when the cottonwood starts talking. Mara shows her the pages. The light glides over the crest, the names, the map. Ruth's mouth hardens. They drew our kitchens like waste, she says. They boxed my garden. It is stamped, Hale says. It is not rumor. The well gives one deep knock that settles in their bones. How did it get here? Ruth asks. Someone put it where most would not look, Mara says. Or the ground spit back. What men dropped, Hale says. Ruth nods once. Either way, it is ours now. Mara folds the map. We copy it, she says. We keep the original cold. Where? Hale asks. The church freezer, Ruth says. Wrapped in a hymn book. Cold keeps secrets. Not forever, Mara says. Just until morning. They cross the yard, with the envelope under Mara's coat. The cottonwood sways, and the leaves sound like a low voice that will not hurry. At the church door, Ruth pauses. If this turns bad, we scatter copies tonight, she says. Some at my house, some with Beth. One with Hale, Mara says. The tester will want to see it. He will see numbers, Hale says. But numbers sit stronger beside letters. Inside, the hymn hum has thinned to a hush. Women wipe tables and stop when they see the crest. We found something, Ruth says. Beth steps close. Alma follows. June brings a crate of paper. Mara lays the envelope down. Beth reads in a flat voice. Alma spreads the map and traces the arrows. They chose who drinks first and who cleans last, Alma says. They chose us. Not anymore, Mara says. We choose noise. Hale taps the map. Runoff enters here and here, he says. If numbers match this scheme, we ask for an injunction at sunup. Ask who, June says. A judge who likes mornings, he says. Judges like quiet, Beth says. Then, we bring our kind of quiet, Ruth says. Rows of women in jars, and names, Mara adds. Names that pushed papers at our doors. They nod and begin sorting pages. Fear walks with them but does not lead. A shadow fills the doorway. The sheriff steps in without his hat. Evening, he says. You left your wake open. It will not end, Ruth says. Not until we stand up. Letters that smelled like rain. The envelope opens in the lantern glow of her kitchen. You're grieving, he says. Grief loves noise. Truth loves noise, Hale says. Ruth pours coffee into chipped cups. Drink or go, she says. I'll talk, he says. Then talk quick, Mara says. Send him off, the sheriff says. He trespasses and steals. He digs, she says. The bell rings again. One iron note. The well rope answers with a slow drag on stone. The sheriff masks a flinch. You hear it, Mara asks. I hear a house settle, he says. I hear a warning, she says. He glances at her coat. What did you pocket? Letters, she says. Your name is on them. I sign many things, he says. You signed both sides, Ruth says. I kept the county working, he says. You kept us drinking. Rust, Mara says. That plant feeds families, he says. It feeds our creek lies, Hale says. The sheriff lifts a hand. Enough. Tomorrow, I come with a notice. Back taxes. A plan. Tomorrow we come with jars and copies. Mara says, women will fill the hall. You'll block a road, he says. We'll open a door, Ruth says. Give me the envelope, he says. I'll keep it safe, No, she says. You're walking into a fight you can't win. I was already in it, she says. He looks toward the church, unsettled by the bell. Who rings it? He asks. The living, Ruth says. The ones you forgot, Mara says. He puts the hat back on as if armor. Last warning. Send him away. Say your goodbyes to the old ways, Hallie says. The sheriff tries a softer tone. Live small and survive, he says. Sell a strip. Take the plan. Breathe. I tried small, she says. All I got was silence. What do you want? He asks. Water that does not lie. A hearing where names are said out loud, she says. You'll get a crowd, he says. Crowds bruise easy. So do secrets, Hallie says. He nods toward the porch. At dawn I will bring a deputy and a camera. At dawn I will bring neighbors and jars, Mara says. We will bring the letters if we must. He looks at Hale. You won't be there. I'll be carrying proof, Hale says. The bell tolls once more, closer, like a hand inside the wall. The rope moves, and the bucket taps. Folks will blame you when it turns ugly, the sheriff says. Let them try, Mara says. He opens the door and stops. Think on votes, he says. They built this badge. Votes are people, she says. People are water. He goes. Hoof leather groans. The door shuts, and the house exhales. Ruth drops her shoulders. Hale studies the rope like it has a pulse. He'll come early, Ruth says. With paper, Hale says. With people, Mara says. You sure? He asks. I am now, she says. Hale slips on his coat. I go to the lab, he says. Dark is a good road. Bring numbers that hold, she says. I will, he says. Ruth bundles copies. I'll wake Beth, she says. Beth wakes Alma. Alma wakes June. Tell them sunup at my porch, Mara says. Jars, bills, names. Say it, Ruth says. No one owns me, Mara says. No one owns this water. Hale opens the door onto cold stars. One bell after dawn, he says. Listen for it. I'll hear it, she says. He goes. Ruth tucks the last pages under her coat and slips out like a thief who steals back what was taken. Mara drops the bar and keeps her palm on the wood until the board stops shaking. She hides the envelope in the flour tin and drags a sack in front of it. She turns the lantern down to a blue thread and sits with the jars and a pencil. The rope creaks like a promise not to forget. She lowers her shoulders and speaks to the room. We meet the morning, she says. We meet it loud. The house listens without a blink. Paper fire, they bait the old family with whispers of a sale. Copies of letters folded like knives. They will light a match, he says. Then let them, she replies. The barn goes up at midnight, orange, as a sunrise that hurts to look at, and she walks through sparks as if stepping into new skin. At dusk, they seed the rumor. Ruth leaves 2 copies at the feed store, where talk holds to burlap. Beth tells Alma on church steps, where the old man can hear without turning his head. June laughs at the diner and says taxes make land small. Hale coils rope on the porch and watches the road breathe. They will call it a lesson, he says. They will call it cleaning up a hazard. Let them speak, Mara answers. Let the words brand them. He nods. Move the tools. Get the mule out. Wet the walls. Leave one door careless. Careless, she repeats, and feels the word harden. They clear the barn without show. Tools sleep in the cellar. Fuel. Cans hide behind the smokehouse. The mule takes an apple and walks to the cottonwood without looking back. Ruth hangs wet sacks along the inner walls. This is bait, she says. Not surrender. I know a trap, Mara says. The pump knocks in the wall, as if counting. Hale checks hinges, and leaves one loose so the wind can talk. He slides a copy with the crest into a bale, and pats the straw like a quiet animal. Greed reaches, he says. Let it reach. Stars lift. The lane stays unchained. June waits with the pickup dark on the ridge. Beth crouches by the fence with the camera open and ready. Ruth lays a hose from pump to barn like a sleeping snake and tests the valve twice. Mara stands by the cottonwood and listens to the well rope breathe. Your mother would lock it all, Ruth says. My mother would pull, Mara says. So pull the town, Ruth answers. Add sunup, Mara says, and feels the word fit. Near midnight, an engine grinds low. Lights blink once, and die. Two shapes move along the fence, careful and sure. A cough tries to hide itself and fails. She knows that cough from market days. The old man and his son. Hold, she whispers. Let them choose. They slip into the barn like they own the dark. Hale's voice comes thin from the shadows. Now, he breathes. Not yet, she says. The first match flares and dies. The second finds straw. Fire licks and grows. She will sell by morning, the old man mutters. The boy lets a laugh loose and believes it. Now, Mara says. Water hits heat with a hiss and a shout. The men curse and stagger for the doors. Hale steps from the side and lifts a camera of his own. The flash freezes a face in white. Beth clicks from the lane. June taps the horn once like a bell. You set us up, the old man snarls. You set yourself up, Mara says. You brought the match. Flames climb anyway. The wet sacks slow them but do not stop them. Back, Hale says. We let it eat what we emptied. Animals, the son says, confused. Safe, Mara answers. I moved them before dark. The sheriff's car appears at the curve as if he slept in the road. The deputy jumps out with a camera and a clipboard. What happened here? The sheriff asks. A lesson, Mara says. The old ways lit themselves. He looks from the men to the barn, making a second son. You boys better pray, he says. We have witnesses, Ruth says. We have pictures, Beth says. We have copies, June says. Hale points at the bale, where the crest curls in flame. They hunted letters, he says. The fire told on them. Sparks float and stick. Smoke lays low and thick. The cottonwood throws quick shadows that look like people who changed their minds. Mara steps into the drift and feels heat right along her arms. Stop, the sheriff says. You'll blister. I already did, she says. She walks through, sparks to the door, and stands with the light on her face. Hale says her name once, sharp and afraid. She lifts a copy from her coat and holds it. This did not burn, she says. The rest was baked. Step back, the deputy calls. But even his pen hesitates. The deputy takes notes and keeps looking at the sheriff for permission that does not come. Arson, Hale says. On record. On film, Beth says. On my porch, Mara says. She lays the copy on the hood of the car. You signed this, she says. You signed both sides. Now it burns your friends faster than me. He watches the flames climb and says nothing. Go home, he tells the men at last. We will talk in the morning. We talk now, Mara says. Names, dates, liquor, threats. Put it down. He does not move his hand. Ruth drags the hose and circles the barn. The women form a line with buckets from the trough. Hale moves wet sacks and clears a path so the roof can fall clean. The night hums like the church when no one sings. The barn drops in on itself and leaves a black mouth that smokes and sighs. Sirens come late and loud. Volunteer boys spill out with gloves and opinions. They see the old man and his son and forget to say hello. Back off, Mara says. Let it finish. Her voice is steady and it carries. The sheriff raises a hand and lets it fall. He watches the roof cave and the sparks rise. The cottonwood mutters, and the well rope gives one soft creak. You made your point, he says. No, Mara answers. I made a start. He looks small against the fire and knows. Sparks float and stick, while smoke lays low. Mara walks through the drift and holds a copy. This did not burn, she says. The rest was bait. Back, the sheriff orders. You'll blister. I already did, she answers. Dawn, Hale says. Bring jars. Bring women, Ruth calls. Bring names, Mara says. Ash, Mark Sembers still breathe. When the sheriff returns to help, palms clean, badge bright. I'm sorry for your loss, he says. Which one? She asks. Hale points at a boot print sunk in soot by the pit. Size 11, he says. New rubber, crown and wheat in the heel. He taps a crooked star inside the crest on the tread. Same flaw lives in the seal on your letters, he says. Mara holds the envelope close and listens for the well. Rope Creek. It answers once, quiet as breath under blankets. Beth kneels with her camera and takes the mark into glass. The sheriff shifts and tries a smile that won't settle. You're reading tea leaves, he says. We're reading what you walked in, Hale says. Ruth loops the hose and looks at the old man by the fence. Bucket or back up. She says he stays and doesn't touch the water. Ash lands on his coat like light snow that knows names. The deputy steps out with a clipboard and writes nothing yet. He glances at his boots and away, slow and guilty. What size? Hale asks. 10, the deputy says, and sounds smaller than his belt. The sheriff looks at Mara's coat and nods at the bulge. Those letters are above your pay, he says. They're above yours too, she answers. I can put a safety hold on your land, he offers. Keep people off, he adds. Like a blanket he calls kindness. Keep them off the creek, she says. That is state, he says. Then learn to aim higher, Hale says. Hale lays butcher paper over the print and rubs charcoal hard. The tread rises in black relief like a voice clearing. He holds it beside the seal. The cousins match, ugly and sure. Planted, the sheriff says, but the word has no legs. Say that at sunup, Ruth says. June taps her horn once from the ridge like a clock. The wind brings the plant's tin breath and wet paper's sour smell. Mara breathes it and does not step back. I'm sorry for your loss. The sheriff tries again. Which one? She asks again. The barn, he says. The old ways, she says. He points toward the frame and searches for a safe story. Faulty wiring, he says. Dry straw and wind. Wet sacks hung there, Ruth says. Animals moved, tools gone, doors set for thieves. You will need a new story. Beth clicks the badge, the crest, the print, the envelope, in one frame. For the wall, she says. The old man snorts, soot on his lip and pride in his eyes. You think paper makes a wall, he says. Paper burns. We learned, Mara says. Now we copy before it burns. Volunteer boys arrive late with a siren that coughs instead of sings. Mara names each, and they stand taller for it. Perimeter, one asks. Look, she says. Print there, crest here, camera there, eyes up, mouth closed, unless asked. They nod and move like a school drill they remember half well. Hale folds the rubbing and slides it into his pack. Flat. Numbers before noon, he tells her. Letters now. Pictures now. People now. Bring proof, she says. Bring yourself, he says. Plain as a fence post. The deputy draws a circle in ash around the coffee tin lid. Leave it, Hale says. It belongs to the son. The sheriff holds out his hand for the envelope and waits. Mara does not move. Chain of custody, he says. Your chain is a leash, she says. I will keep my own. You will drown in court, he says. We already drowned in our troughs, she says. We're learning to breathe different. He studies the women, the jars, the copies, the hose, the ash marks. He looks like a man doing math he doesn't want to show. Hale taps the crooked star point again with his charcoal nub. That Leanne kills deniability, he says. Mud signed the paper for you. Beth frames both prints with the envelope seal and clicks once. Ruth wrings slack from the hose and stares the old man down. "Sunup," she says. "Jars, bills, names." "Say it," Hale tells Mara. "Sunup," Mara says. "Bring what you owe and who you owe." Ash blows into thin lines that look like words and blow apart. The rope creaks again from the yard, and Beth turns her head quick. "He hears us," Beth whispers. "We hear him," Mara says, eyes flat on the badge. The sheriff tries one more tone and rubs his face clean. "Last chance to be small," he says. "Last chance to be safe." "No," she says. "No more small. No more safe alone." He touches his hat brim and lets his hand fall empty. "Live quiet," he says, Cellestrip. "Take the plan. Breathe." "We breathe here," she says. "We breathe together." Hale steps close enough that she feels the heat he carries. "We're close," he says. "Close hurts," she says. "Close is good," he says. "It means we're right." The old man drops his bucket and shakes soot from his fingers. "You'll curse this night," he says. "I already did," she says. "Now I use it." He goes to his truck without looking back at anyone. The deputy studies his heel like it belongs to someone else. He says nothing and clicks his pen closed and still. The sheriff lingers in the glow and looks smaller than his badge. "Dawn," he says. "You plan a show. We plan the truth where you can hear it," she says. "Ring the bell if your ears need help," Hale says. The sheriff eyes the tin over the print and nods once. "That stays," Mara says, "until the sun sees it." "I'll be here," he says. "We will too," she answers. Another gust slides off the ridge and smells like old secrets waking. It brings metal and wet paper and the quiet of burned wood. Embers blink like eyes and then dim and stop. The cottonwood mutters and the rope gives a third slow creak she feels. She pockets the letters deeper and presses her palm to steady them. "We meet the morning," she says. "We meet it loud." Hale nods and Ruth squeezes her arm hard enough to hold fear still. Beth winds her strap and turns toward the road without hurry. The deputy scuffs a heel and freezes like he heard a teacher speak. The sheriff breathes through his nose and blinks at nothing. Mara fills her chest and lets the air stay steady and clear. The wind lifts ash and lays it down again, like notes on a table. Each mark points away. "Bag it," the sheriff says. "Chain of custody. Chain of power," Ruth says. "We'll lay it plain," Hale says. He spreads butcher paper on a flat stone and sets each thing down. He writes where it came from and the depth. The deputy looks at the tag. "That star is the same." "It is," Mara says. "Your heel left it by my barn." "I wasn't there," he whispers. "Maybe not," Hale says. "But someone with that seal was, and someone carried ash here and tucked their trash in our dead." "Think of peace," the sheriff says. "Peace left when graves became shelves," Mara says. "You'll tear this town," he says. "It was torn," she says. "We're pulling the thread that shows Hale turns the bone." "Tool mark," he says. "Round, a bit run for wire." "Accident," the sheriff says. "Say it slower," Ruth tells him. "See if it turns true." Mara hears the well rope creak from her yard, though the distance should swallow it. She keeps her eyes on the bone until her hands go still. "We finish," she says. "We make it speak." Hale lifts a small nail with a pale hair caught under its head. He sets it on the paper like another small word. "Enough," the sheriff says. "Stand down. Let me make calls." "You'll make the same calls you always make," Mara says. "Two men with seals and clean boots." "I can help you," he says. "Stand with us then," she says. The deputy won't meet his eyes. "I didn't know," he says. "I signed lines. I watched clocks. I didn't know this." "Now you do," Mara says. "Know it where it counts." The Old man from the fence line steps from the dark. You making another mess, he says. You made this one, Ruth tells him. Sit. Paper made it, he says. Paper guided you, Mara says. Your hands did the rest. The hum rises. Close and heavy, as if the hill leans in to listen. Beth lowers the camera. Sun up, Hale says. Jars, letters, pictures, people. Say it, Ruth says. Sun up, Mara answers. Bring what you owe and who you owe. The sheriff's badge catches weak light and looks smaller than at midnight. Last chance to be small, he says. No more small, she says. No more safe, alone. She folds the butcher paper over the objects and holds it like something warm, though each piece is cold as moonlight. The well rope creaks once more. The ground under her boots feels right again, and ready. She stands where her people are, and does not move. Courthouse light dawn bleaches the sky as they carry what they found to the old courthouse with the broken clock. This will not save you, the patriarch murmurs on the steps. I'm not the one who needs saving, she answers. Papers unfold, voices rise, and the crowd leans in while the well rope thrums in her memory. Mara walks with Ruth and Beth and June, jars in their arms and copies in their coats, while Hale strides from the far lot with a folder. The sheriff stands by the door like a hinge, and the deputy like a shadow that forgot to choose a side. Doors. Open at 8, the sheriff says. We're here for light, Mara says. Light travels, Hale says, as the clerk fumbles keys and waves them in. They fill benches while men from the plant cluster at the back, and the old man takes the aisle seat. A judge in shirt sleeves comes with coffee. He does not sip. If this is a show, keep it brief, he says. This is water, Mara says. Brief kills cows. Names, he says, and they give them. Mara, Klein, Ruth, Beth, June, Hale, Sheriff. Speak your claim, the judge says. Mara places the envelope on the table and keeps her hand on it. Letters in my well, she says. Ruth adds, a bone wired with a tag by our graves. Beth says, a boot print with the same wrong star. Hale lifts his folder. Numbers. Speak them, the judge says. Iron and solvents above limits, in creek and well. Repeats match. The tester signed here, Hale answers, sliding a page. The judge reads without moving his mouth. Who authorized diversion and containment upstream? Mara asks. Plantmen. Studies shoes. The sheriff studies a knot in the rail. Answer, the judge says, and no one does. Hale places a rubbing beside the seal. The star's top point leans left in both. Beth lays out pictures like cards that cannot be reshuffled. Chain of custody, the sheriff says. Chain of fear, Ruth says. Where was the bone? The judge asks. Family cemetery, Mara says. Shallow, fresh. Call the coroner, he tells the clerk, whose hands shake on the phone. The old man clears his throat. Folks get carried away. Fires start, storms wash, bones move. Who drilled the hole? Mara asks. Who wired the tag? Accident, the sheriff says, and the word looks sick here. The judge turns to the plantmen. Did you bleed into their creek? We followed permits, one says. Show them, the judge says, and they show nothing. Hale taps the map. Auxiliary acquisition by consent. I did not consent, Mara says. They told me grief makes sales easy. They told me to be small. The old man says, you'll break this town. It's already cracked, she says. We're pointing at the seam. The judge sips and grimaces. Tastes like copper. That is your tap, June says. Welcome. The judge sets the cup down. Temporary halt on diversion and an inspection, he says. Sheriff, secure sights, not mouths. That makes a scene, the sheriff says. Scenes are our work, the judge says. The patriarch leans in. This will not save you. I'm not the one who needs saving, Mara says. Steady now. This saves our dead and our living. Hale slides one last page. Statement from a worker laid off last week. Orders to dump at night. He names the boss and a deputy. The deputy flinches. I didn't know the bone. I know the nights. I know the smell. Then speak, Mara says. I will. He says. The judge nods. Bring him tomorrow. Bring jars. Bring the bell. I want the town to hear itself. The sheriff buttons his coat. You're pushing me. We're pushing the truth into daylight, she says. The broken clock refuses to move. The crowd does. Women stand. Men scuff. The aisle widens. Shame, the patriarch says. On you, Mara says. On what you signed. The judge bangs the table with his palm. Order. Papers fold. Voices settle. The room holds a new shape and does not give it back. The rope thrums in her mind, low and sure. One more thing, Mara says. The barn burned on purpose. We had cameras and names. She meets the sheriff until he turns. Do your job, or step aside. I will do it, he says, like a man who wants to believe himself. Hale leans close. You stood. We all did, she says. She sets a jar before the judge. A faint red thread floats in the water. This is what we drink, she says. Look and say it plain. The judge looks, does not pretend, writes, signs, and stands. Outside, the bell rings once, and the crowd answers with its breath. Together, the ridge answers. The chase spills from the courthouse to the mountain road with trucks, dust, and men who never learned to say sorry. You won't outrun land that knows your name, the mountain man says. The ridge gives back an echo. Men forget to ignore, and the widow refuses to blink. Mara rides shotgun in Ruth's pickup, while Hale leans out the window, counting tailgates. Beth and June follow with jars. They're hauling drums, Hale says. Night work in daylight. Then catch them, Mara says. Before they bury proof. Road splits ahead, Ruth says. Left to the plant, right to the ridge. They'll climb, Hale says. Liars think height is safety. Dust blooms at the switchback. To plant trucks grind upward, the patriarch's flatbed tucked behind like a loyal dog. He brought the match, Ruth says. Now the shovel. He's burying more than straw, Mara says. The sheriff leans out. Pull over, he shouts. Court order. Order this, the patriarch yells. We work. You dump, Hale says. Stop before the ridge stops you. The road narrows to carved rock and scrub. The ridge throws their words back like bent tin. You won't outrun land that knows your name, Hale says. Land remembers, Mara says. So do women. They hit the last bend. A drum tips and rings along stone. A thin red thread spills and runs pink through dust. Pictures, Beth says. Samples, June answers. The patriarch breaks and scrapes his flatbed into the ditch. The first plant truck fishtails and stalls. The second keeps climbing. Driver wild-eyed. Block him, Ruth says. Hale swings his door and steps into the lane. Stop, he calls. You'll go over. Move, the driver screams. Don't, Mara says, low and final. The ridge answers like a bell. The engine dies. The driver bows to the wheel. Out, the sheriff says, running. No cuffs, the driver pleads. I've got kids. Then stop poisoning them, Mara says. The deputy climbs the running board. Keys, he says. Come easy. The man hands them over and sobs once. Breathe, the deputy says. Speak when it's time. Hale kneels by the spill. Smell that, he says. Rain and pennies, Mara says. Numbers will name it, he says, sliding a vial under. The trickle, the ridge already did. The patriarch stomps toward them. You staged this, he says. You chased decent men. You chased money, Mara says. We chased truth. He points at the sheriff. Arrest them. The sheriff looks at the smear, at the driver shaking, at Mara not blinking. I'll arrest who breaks the order, he says. Start with whoever moved waste. You signed with them, the old man spits. I signed both sides, the sheriff says, and the words sound like a knot loosening. Do your job now, Mara says. He nods. Deputy, secure the trucks, hold the ridge, call the judge, the coroner, and the tester. Yes, sir, the deputy says. Ruth sets a jar beside the red smear. See how it curls, she says. See how it won't sink. Beth frames the smear, the jar, and Mara's hand. Say it, Beth says. This is what we drink, Mara says. This is what they sold. The driver from the first truck steps forward, hat twisting. They said it was safe, he says. Move it before dawn. Who said? Hale asks. Boss and counsel, he says. Names at the hearing, Mara says. A new echo floats. From the crest, simple as a bell. Men who never learned to say sorry stare at their boots. Enough talk, the patriarch says. Move the rigs. I'll settle with the council. You'll settle with your name, Mara says. Start there. He steps close, but Hale fills the space with a slow, simple no. Back, Hale, says not today. The sheriff lifts a hand. The ridge holds breath. All of you, back from the drop, he orders. Mara does not blink. Give me the letters, the patriarch says. You don't know the weight. I carry it fine, she says. You carry grief, he says. And my town, she says. I won't drop either. The ridge throws her words back firm. The wind turns and lifts the plant's sour breath. Say you're sorry, the deputy tells the driver. I am, the driver says. Louder, Ruth says. I am, he repeats, and means it. Mara looks at the sheriff. Your turn, he swallows. I will be, he says. After the work. Then start, she says. Hale caps the vial and rises. We're close, he says. Close hurts, she says. Close is good, he says. It means we're right. Engines click. Dust settles on jars. The judge's car climbs toward them. Mara stands with the ridge at her back and the spill at her feet, steady as a post. She stays steady. Rebirth, everything ends where it began. Dirt, stone, rope, and the quiet that comes after fire. You promised me a rebirth, she says. You did it, he answers. She plants a live thing in ash, closes the well with care, and watches morning lay a clean sheet over the valley as the badge dims in the first light. Mara stands on the porch and lets the cold enter her lungs. The ridge sits quiet, trucks chained, where the judge left them. Hale rinses jars at the pump while Ruth stacks copies. Beth lines photographs along the wall. The sheriff waits by the cottonwood with his hat in his hands. Say the order again, Mara says. Temporary halt, inspection, custody on the waist, the sheriff says. You have the injunction? Say your part, Ruth adds. I will testify, he says. I signed both sides. I will speak one. You're late, Beth says. I know, he says. Holitize labels. Numbers are clear, he says. The ridge spit truth. Mara thinks of the jar before the judge and the red thread that would not sink. She thinks of the bone, wired with a crooked star. We bury him right, she says. We bury the lie too. Start with the field, Ruth, says Dendawell. They walk to the cemetery. Sun comes over the hill with no hurry. The ground where they dug waits like a held breath. Flags mark squares of truth. Mara kneels and presses her palm to the dirt. He stays, she says. No one moves him again. The sheriff lowers his gaze. I am sorry, he says. Be useful, she answers. I intend to be, he says. Hale sets a cedar sapling in the hole she opens. Roots like damp, he says. They knit broken ground. Good, she says. Ruth pours a cup of clean water from a jar they hauled from a spring on the far ridge. Not from our well, she says. Not yet. Soon, Mara says. The sapling drinks. The mountain hum softens. Mara smooths soil with her fingers. You promised me a rebirth, she says. You did it. Hale answers. I only heard rock. You dug, she says. I stood. They carry tools to the cottonwood, where the well waits, lid set aside. The rope hangs wet and patient. She feels the old fear stir and settle. Close it and keep it honest, Ruth says. Not shut like a secret. Shut like a door that opens when asked. How? Mara asks. With a lock everyone can hold, Ruth says, handing her a ring with 3 keys. Yours, mine, and the church's. Fair, Mara says. Hale lowers the bucket and raises it slow. The water comes up clear. Spring flushed the throat, he says. Or the plant stopped choking it. Both, Mara says. Test anyway, Ruth says. Always, Hale says. The sheriff steps forward. I brought a plaque for the barn site, he says. Volunteer boys. Made it. What does it say? Mara asks. It says, we saw, he answers. They carry the plaque to the black mouth, where the barn used to breathe. Mara sets it high. Ruth holds the post straight, while Hallie drives it. We saw, Mara reads when it stands. Beth raises her camera. One last, she says. Make it true today, Mara says. They crowd into the frame, not tidy. The shutter clicks. What now? The sheriff asks. Work, Mara says. Fences, calves, bills, then hearings, then elections. You'll run, he says. I'll stand, she says. Hale wipes his hands. Tester sends final numbers. By noon. Courthouse, at 1. We bring jars, Ruth says. We bring people, Beth says. We bring names, Mara says. The deputy clears his throat. I have one, he says. From the Knights. Say it to the judge, the sheriff tells him, then turns to Mara. You closed the door. You opened the town. She looks at the well. We closed a wound, she says. Now we keep it clean. Ruth fishes the envelope from the flour tin and hands it back. Original stays with you, she says. Copies go to the vault. Mara pockets the weight. It smells like rain, she says. Let it, Hale says. They walk the fence line as the valley brightens. Women step from porches with jars. Men come behind with hands willing. Children carry nails and string. The judge's car moves slow along the road. The patriarch watches from his porch and does not lift a hand. Say sorry, Ruth calls. He says nothing. The badge on the sheriff's chest dims in the light until it looks like any piece of metal. Promise me this sticks. Mara says to Hale, it will stick if we keep pressing, he says. Then press, she says. They lift the well lid and fit the hasp. Mara turns her key, then Ruth, then the churches. The rope gives one last creak like thanks. She wipes ash from her palms and plants her boot heels in new ground. Morning lays a clean sheet over the valley. She watches it, and she doesn't blink.